Hello VC. A while back I mentioned in one of my videos that I'd started buying records on Vinted, and it's taken me a while to get my act together to put together a video to show some of those records. In the meantime, George Pryor has done a really good video about his first purchase on Vinted, so you should check that out. You should check out his channel anyway, because he always has interesting, intelligent things to say about a lot of great music. So head over to his channel after this. But I thought today I'd show you some of those records I bought on Vinted, plus a couple of other purchases that I've got elsewhere. I think I said before that I discovered Vinted just because it's a place my kids sometimes pick up clothes, and I'd always thought of it as just a place to buy second-hand clothes. But then I realised some people were selling vinyl on there, and I thought, well, that's all going to be crap, surely. But apparently not. Some of it is hugely overpriced. Some of it is ridiculously underpriced, and you have to trawl through a hell of a lot of crap to find the good stuff. But I managed to find some absolute gems. I'm not going to show everything I bought on Vinted, but I'm going to show a few choice albums. Now, the first thing I bought was this one, Badger One Live. And the vendor had this up. Bear in mind, it's not an auction site, it's a pay what you see or make an offer kind of a site. He had this up for £6, and there were a few people watching it, and I thought, £6? What's wrong with it? And descriptions on Vinted are not very comprehensive, let's put it that way. And the photographs are pretty perfunctory at best. So you do take you take a bit of a gamble when you buy things sometimes. Now, one of the photos the guy had on of this had the inside of the gatefold, and I noticed there were just white marks where the Badger would once have been attached. And I thought, I wonder if anyone else has bothered to ask him whether the Badger is stuck inside, the sleeve or something where it's become detached. So I messaged him and said, oh yeah, the Badger's there, it just needs gluing back on. Buy it now, £6 for an album that, as anyone who has tried finding a decent copy of this album at a good price will know, that is a bargain. So £6 for a fantastic album. Came out in 1973. It's got that amazing Roger Dean sleeve, really beautiful winter landscape. And this was a band that featured Tony Kaye, who had played mainly Hammond organ in Yes. And anyone expecting this to sound like early Yes is probably going to be disappointed, because this probably has more in common with bands like, I guess, the Allman Brothers. I hear bits of the Doobies, perhaps, Santana, sort of bluesy jam bands. It's definitely not what you would expect either from the sleeve or from the personnel involved. But it is really good for what it is. I think they went out on tour with Yes as special guests. And in fact, John Anderson co-produces the album. I imagine a lot of Yes fans would have been quite nonplussed when this lot hit the stage, because they do not sound like Yes at all. You've got sort of upbeat, funky numbers, extended sort of proggy blues jams. There's no vocalist credited on here, but I have read that it's Jackie Lomax who sings, and he's got a really fantastic white soul, bluesy, at times gravelly rock voice. There's incendiary guitar on here. Tony Kaye's keyboards are fantastic, and he doesn't limit himself to Hammond, which is kind of what he's known for in Yes. I think they waited until Rick Wakeman came along to start playing around with synths. But he plays some amazing synth on here. There's one track called The Fountain. Yeah, second track on the first side. Brilliant synth solo on that. Absolutely love it. So, yeah, this is one for fans of the Allmans, perhaps Traffic, the Doobies, like I say. And yes, there are definitely prog elements. There's a little bit of Wishbone Ash in here as well, I'd say, perhaps. There's nice Mellotron washes. I love it. It's a really great album at a great price. And what an introduction to buying on Vinted. Great gimmick sleeve. So, £6, love it. And in no particular order, next up, Amon Dill 2's Wolf City album. In a really nice gatefold sleeve. Lovely artwork on this one. This came out in 1972. It's on the United Artists label. This is UK first pressing, I think. It says manufactured in Germany, but I think it's the UK, for the UK market. And I really, really enjoy playing this one. Of course, they get lumped in Krautrock, and that's exactly what they are, but they don't, generally speaking, certainly on this album, have those kind of motoric riffs. Far more of a space rock vibe on this album. There's some moody, intense stuff on here. The first track, Surrounded by the Stars, is definitely space rock. I say it's moody and intense. There's Spanish guitar on there. And there's a vocal which almost has like a post-punk sort of feel to it. It's a female vocal, but it's got that sort of post-punk feel. And I can see why these guys and Hawkwind kind of get lumped together quite often, because there's definite similarities in their sound. You got Mellotron on here. There's some really nasty wah-wah guitar soloing. Second track, what's it called? Jailhouse Frog. Wah-wah on there is fantastic. And what you got? Third track, Green Bubble Raincoated Man. Again, there's a bit of a punky feel to the vocals. Pretty much ahead of its time, the sound of it. And that one's got a bit of a prog rock gallop to the end. There's some real head nodders on here. There's drifting, spacey sounds. There's some really nice, breezy, languid guitar at times and loose-limbed drums. It's an absolute killer album. Love it. I think I paid 20-25 quid for that. So, not an absolute bargain, but, probably below the going rate if you were to look it up on Discogs. So I was very happy to get that one. And then next up is an album that was a bit of a blind buy. The vendor had it up for £5 and offered £3.50, and they accepted my offer, and that's for a new and sealed copy of this, which is Ark of Octophilis by Spider Kitten, who were a new one on me, but the artwork drew me in. I mean, that is fantastic artwork, and on the back as well. It's beautiful. And this came out in 2016. They are a Welsh band, and they get kind of lumped in with the sort of doom stoner rock band kind of crowd. But for me, this is a much more ambitious album. Perhaps it's atypical of their sound, and I think from what I've read, it probably is, because it's a bit of a concept album. I think the concept is basically that Spider Kitten have these fictitious followers, like they're a cult, who build an ark, pictured on the front there, I guess, which they're going to launch into space, and it's going to be a floating recording studio where they're going to record the ultimate album. And it's an interesting concept, that's for sure. There's the band on the insert. Did I say they're from Wales? They're from Wales. I love this record. This was such a surprise. I mean, it was a no-risk purchase at that price. But yeah, I suppose in terms of the sound, I hear a fair bit of Alice in Chains, some Caius, but a more far-reaching, spacey, progressive sound than either of those bands. Starts off with a kind of a semi-spoken word intro, which sounds a bit like Nick Cave or Tom Waits vocally. And that's an interesting introduction. And then we get this sort of funeral-paced bass dirge with clattering stone drums and ethereal backing vocals, and they're off. And you never quite come down. I love it. There's all sorts of spacey UFO noises on here. It's a chilled, psychedelic, stoner prog monster, and is thoroughly, thoroughly recommended. And they're not afraid to rein themselves in occasionally, have a nice acoustic element to a song. I mean, there's one track, first track, side 2, which is called The Ark, which has like, I think it's a ukulele intro, which brings to mind Led Zeppelin's Battle of Evermore, or even something off Tubular Bells. Fantastic stuff. And if you can pick this up as cheaply as I did, or even you pick it up for under a tenner, you're getting yourself a bargain. This is a real find. Very, very happy to have this. Who knew this kind of stuff was coming out of Wales like 8 years ago? So, Spider Kitten. And here's one I was chuffed to pick up. It's the third album by Jonesy, Growing. Gatefold sleeve, which is in pretty decent shape. Yeah, a black cover like that to only have a little bit of scuffing at the top is pretty good going for an album that came out in 1973. And this is a first UK pressing, and it's on the Dawn label. And don't know whether you can tell, but this is a really, really clean copy. I mean, it plays near mint, to be honest. It's fantastic. I paid 35 quid for this. Again, a Vinted purchase. I haven't seen this album around too often, and when I have, it's a hell of a lot more expensive than that. I've got their other 2 albums, or the 2 albums that preceded this, and they're both reissues, which I thought was the only way I was going to be able to pick this up affordably. But no, I have my own copy now. They've perhaps become less proggy as the albums have gone on. I think they released 3 albums in the space of about 14-15 months, which is ridiculous. And I think that perhaps shows on this album because the songs aren't quite there. It's definitely a jammy album. It sounds like perhaps a lot of it was created on the run, sort of in the studio, sort of on the hoof. That's the expression, isn't it? On the hoof. And as such, like I say, it lacks songs, but the musicianship is fantastic. The first track, Can You Get That Together, is about 8.5 minutes long, and it's an urgent, funky horn rock groove with some really nice jazzy, almost like Ray Manzarek from The Doors, electric piano on it, and a wailing guitar solo. In fact, everybody gets a turn to solo on this track, which, when it's the first track on the album and it's that improvised, you think, yeah, song ideas were a little bit thin on the ground, but fortunately it's saved by the fact that there's some great musicianship on here, and it's never dull. It really is never dull. So you get squawking sax and a drum solo. It's a real funky jam. It's good. I mean, it's a jam masquerading a song, but it is good. I mean, elsewhere there's tons of tasty wah-wah guitar on here. The second track, Waltz for Yesterday, has some really nice massed harmony backing vocals, which is really my thing, so that's worth checking out. I made a note on track 3, Know Who Your Friends Are, that it's progressive, but it's not prog. There might be hints of Yes and perhaps Laurie Wisefield era Wishbone Ash on that track, but it's only hints. And the jazzy, the sort of jam band, horn rock kind of elements are definitely more pervasive than the prog elements. But that track, Know Who Your Friends Are, it is possibly my favourite track on the album. It has more than one wailing guitar solo on it, and one of them kind of segues into this sort of Miles Davis Bitches Brew era echoing trumpet, which is just fantastic. Just so up my street. So yeah, on this album, Jonesy make a lot of really enjoyable noises, but rarely do they provide us with any songs, I guess. I think most of it's probably written in the studio on the hoof. but a really enjoyable album, and especially at the price I got it for. So that's Jonesy. Here's one I've been after for a while, and I was well aware of the mixed reviews for this one. It's a double album, and I struggle to think of a double album that is perfect all the way through. This is no exception, and this is probably has as many misses as it does hits on it, and it's Love's Out There album. I say double album from 1969 on the Blue Thumb label. Let's open it up for you. And the sleeves seen better days, but I paid 12 quid for this, and again, plays great. The vinyl's in great shape, even if the sleeves taken a bit of a battering. But like they say, you don't listen to the sleeve. So yeah, it's a weird old album. This it starts off with I think it's the first track. Yeah, I'll Pray For You. Nearly 4 minutes of what is basically a doo-wop track. It's a horrible start to the LP, I've got to say. Then it follows that with Abalone, which is a not great, mildly cosmic country track. And for a while there, I was starting to think I'd overpaid for this by paying 12 quid. But then you get third track, Signed DC, which is like a... Well, when I listen to it, it really reminded me of like a druggy Nights in White Satin, if you can imagine that, with crunchy fuzz guitars and a really great impassioned vocal and dirty mouth organ. You know, it's a real moody, dangerous sounding track. Absolutely love that one. So this is an album of highs and lows. You've got some real crap on this album. We've also got probably some of Love's best tracks, I'd argue. The track Listen to My Song is probably the first thing on here that harks back to that more familiar Love sound of Forever Changes, that kind of acoustic baroque pop psych kind of thing. I'm not crazy about the whistling on that track, but then has there ever been a rock track with whistling that you think has been improved by having somebody whistle on it? I don't think so. Then other highlights, Standout sounds kind of like Tony Joe White's brand of swamp funk, and I reckon Lenny Kravitz probably was very familiar with this track before he launched his career, because it's almost a blueprint for the sound he's known for. Then we've got the odd horrible track again. Discharged is a really horrible novelty anti-war track. Best skipped over. Absolutely horrible. Doggone is... It's not bad. It sounds a bit like a kind of a Ben Harper type finger picking sort of folky rock track. But then we get a 9-minute drum solo. I mean, it's not the worst drum solo I've ever heard, but drum solos are not something you want to revisit. So you're stuck with 9 minutes of replaying that same... forget it. You've got moments on here of almost Crosby, Stills and Nash type vocal harmonies. Like on the track I Still Wonder, which is really, really nice track. Some nice fuzz guitar in there as well. Love Is More Than Words is a mid-paced track with about an 8 minutes extended scorching guitar freak out, and that is an absolute highlight. Really well worth investigating. There's more novelty shit on here with Car Lights On in the Daytime Blues. It's just hokey, it's horrible. Willow Willow is another track that will be very recognisable to anyone who's a fan of Forever Changes and Da Capo. It's got that kind of vibe to it. And there's a track called Gather Round, which is a real nice birdsy folk rocker. I think that might be the last track on the album. It is, yeah. Nearly 6 minutes long. Some beautiful finger picking on that. And a vocal that almost sounds like an auto-tuned Bob Dylan, or Bob Dylan of all the kind of the the rough edges kind of smoothed off. So that's a really good way to end the album. Like I say, this is such a mixed bag, this album. As a double album, it's like most double albums. Give me a brilliant single album instead of a double album where you're kind of thinking, oh, for God's sakes, not that track again. But the good stuff justifies the purchase, and it's essential for that reason. So yeah, Out There by Love. And next up, I bought a bundle of records, stuff that I already had, but I figured some of them would be upgrades, others I would just sell on to raise money for other stuff I really wanted. But what I did want in the bundle was this. An eagle-eyed amongst you might notice there's another copy. That's my original copy, which is not an original pressing. It's like an 80s sort of priceless or nice price type reissue, which I bought new when I was a teenager. And it plays great, but compared to this, which is a UK London Records original, let me show you that London label. It just sounds like a third generation cassette tape. You know, it lacks the warmth and the depth of the original. So as you can see, again, it's a really, really clean copy. And that's the thing that seems risky about buying on Vinted, because it doesn't seem so far to be populated by record dealers, people who really know their stuff. And let's face it, record dealers don't always get it right or aren't always particularly reputable. But when someone's just selling stuff that they've had in their attic for the last 40 years, you don't know whether they've destroyed the albums. They certainly don't know how to grade them. They don't know how to photograph them. But I seem to remember the photographs on Vinted of this were pretty decent, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to go for that. And I think I paid £6 for this, or perhaps it's £7. Like I say, bundled in with a bunch of other stuff. Now, the one thing it doesn't have, and never did have, which the reissue does, is this picture in the sleeve. And I thought, do I take the picture in the sleeve out of this one? But I don't like Frankensteining records like that. I can live without seeing a picture of ZZ Top in some football stadium in Texas. I've got an original. I'm going to sell my 80s reissue. And I'm very happy with this. Like I say, it sounds so much better than the 80s reissue. And I didn't realise the 80s reissue didn't sound great until I bought this. And a few words about the album. Don't know whether you're familiar with it, but it's a half live album, half studio album. The live side is okay. The studio side is fantastic and has some of ZZ Top's best material. I mean, everyone knows Tush. Good track, not my favourite, great. Blue Jean Blues is a superb, slow, moody blues track, absolutely fantastic. Balinese is fantastic. Heard It on the X, Nasty Dogs and Funky Kings. If only this was all studio and no live, it would be ZZ Top's best album. As it is a great record and well worth picking up. Now, a little bit of backstory on this one. This is a band who, they to me were everything that was wrong with pop music in the 80s, which made me embrace heavy rock, heavy metal when I was a teenager. I thought they were an awful, weedy synth pop band. And then all of a sudden, in the late 80s, early 90s, they turned into a decent band and my ears pricked up. And this album, 1990s Violator by Depeche Mode, was a turning point for me. I think hearing Personal Jesus was the track that made me take another look at this band and made me realise they'd gone from being kind of weedy pop boys to being real men musically. Now, I half jokingly claim that I have a hand in an improvement in their sound and their look. Well, actually, completely jokingly, I went to an acid house party, a New Year's Eve party, and a squat in the East End of London, sometime in the late 80s. And I was there with my band, and we looked the part. We looked very 80s hard rock band. We looked like, Guns N' Roses, that kind of image. And Depeche Mode happened to be at this, illegal squat party as well, looking like they did in the early 80s, really, all clean cut and sort of short hair. And they kept kind of wandering past us and looking over. And of course, we didn't interact with them because they were these kind of weedy pop guys. But it wasn't long after that Dave Gahan appeared with tattoos and growing out his hair and got a heroin habit. And I think we've got to take some credit for that. Yes, I think that might be what's called a coincidence, but I like to claim credit for that one. But this is a great album. Like I say, Personal Jesus, fantastic track. It made me suddenly take notice and think, oh, okay, I need to reassess this band. Still don't particularly like the early stuff, but the albums that they did, this one and the follow-up, the name escapes me at the moment. What the hell was it called? It's the one with Walking in My Shoes on it. Yeah, it'll come to me. Really great tracks. Still not full-on rock albums by any stretch of the imagination, but they were darker and more grown up. This came out in 1990, like I say. This is an original UK pressing as well, which is really hard to get now. There it is on the, is it the Mute Records label? It's a decent copy. It's a bit of crackle on the second side, but I can live with that. It's probably better than I expected it to be from the kind of fairly non-existent description on Vinted. And I paid 16 quid for this, which anyone who's tried to find a copy of this album, an original copy, will know is a good deal. It starts off with a track called World in My Eyes, which has a real hard electric groove to it, which brings to mind sort of hedonistic New York nightclubs, I guess. There's a moodiness to the vocals and the overall vibe, which shows this band has grown up and moved beyond their early synth pop days. The third track, Personal Jesus, said enough about that already. Love that track. I suppose it's because it's got this kind of electro glam stomp to it. It almost creates a sort of roadmap for Marilyn Manson's, industrial glam metal that he would do, at the end of the decade. Guitars on here really play, well, they're either absent or they're heavily processed or they just play a supporting role. On the whole, there are exceptions. And sometimes I'm not sure whether I'm hearing a guitar or a synth which is distorted to sound like a guitar. But I don't care if the overall vibe gives me the sound that I want. If I'm getting that kind of rock feel from it, I don't care if it's guitar or synths. If it sounds good, it sounds good. And this sounds great. When you've got moments like Waiting for the Night, which is, again, it's dark and moody, but it has that sort of Tangerine Dream-like pulsating, slow-burning feel to it. I don't think there's any drums on that track. It's just throbbing synth beats. Superb stuff. At times, Dave Gahan's voice reminds a little bit of Scott Walker or even Mark Almond. And there's one track, I think it's Blue Dress, where his vocal sounds like a male version of Alison Moyet. And I've always thought Alison Moyet had a fantastic voice, so that is a compliment, believe me. The album finishes with a track called Clean, which has real tom-tom rhythms rather than synthetic drums, or at least they sound real to me. There are guitar textures on there, real guitar textures, and a tapestry of spooky synth noises. It's a really great track. and in it Dave Garhan claims to be clean. I don't think so. I think his heroin habit got worse as years went on. And that is a real moody, pulsating, dramatic track. So, I mean, you all know this album, I'm sure, a lot better than I do, but I love it. I'm really happy to finally have an original copy of that. So enough with the Vinted purchases. I've got a whole bunch more, which I might show in another video, but I want to show you 2 or 3 items that I picked up elsewhere. 2 of these I picked up in one of my local charity shops, who they know what they're selling, but they don't overcharge for it, and somehow or other they seem to get some great donations in. So I managed to get a copy of Budgie's debut, and it's not a first pressing, it's a second pressing. I think the first pressing had the sort of red and brown MCA labels, and this has the blue and black labels. But the second pressing anyway, very early pressing. The original albums came out in 71. I can't remember for certain, but this came out same year or year later, I think. Paid £25 for that. Very, very happy to do that. You'd pay that for a new reissue, and it wouldn't sound anywhere near as good. And this sounds fantastic. Yeah, in really nice shape. This pretty much sets the stall out as far as Budgie's career, certainly for the first sort of handful of albums goes. The first track, Guts, it has a bludgeoning, sort of muddy riff, near Sabbath heaviness. You get Burke Shelley's sort of strangled, Geddy Lee-esque vocal, and a simple but effective bass drum groove. And that's kind of what you can expect from Budgie. They are a great band, a great riff band, a great 70s Welsh hard rock band. You do get light and shade on the album. There are a couple of tracks, Everything in My Heart and You and I, which are both very beautiful, sweet acoustic guitar-led tracks with sweet vocals, and provide a nice bit of light and shade when you've got these, monstrous riffs sort of either side of them. You got the usual bonkers track titles that Budgie are famous for. So you've got Nude Disintegrating Parachute Woman finishing the first side, and that again, it has this kind of muddy, sludgy riff and stop start quiet loud type dynamics, and it's kind of a mix of Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, I suppose, and that one's 8.5 minutes long, so you get your money's worth there. Rape of the Locks is the story of somebody threatening to cut Burke Shelley's hair, I think, and that's an interesting track. You got some monolithic drumming on All Night Petrol, really nice fuzz guitar riff, and that one sounds like the blueprint for every sludgy stoner rock band on the planet that was to follow. I love these early Budgie albums. They sound like they were recorded rather than produced, and sometimes I prefer that. It's just so honest, and very highly recommended. I mean, Roger Bain produced this, and he went on, or had also produced Black Sabbath, went on to produce Judas Priest, amongst others. But he didn't really do a lot on this album, I've got to say. He pressed record and that was about it. But great album, and a really good price. Did I say that these last couple I got from a charity shop? The Budgie album I got from a charity shop. This one I picked up in a record fair, and can't quite believe the price I got this for. This does not turn up at this price. Thin Lizzy's debut album. Not only is it the debut, but it's the first UK pressing from 1971. And it is in good shape. It is in really good shape. There is, I don't know if you can see at the bottom there is one mark, but it doesn't have any effect on play. And I think that may be the reason why this guy was only asking £15 for this. I got Lizzy's debut, first pressing, for £15 at a record fair. Can't believe it. So yeah, it came out in 1971. And I love this album. I mean, I'd dipped into it before, but I tend not to listen to albums that I don't own. I will stream something to see if I like it. I'll stream something if it's something I love but want to play it in the car. I can't honestly say I knew any of the tracks on here, because I don't think any of them survived the live set much beyond these early years. And I think I prefer this to Shades of a Blue Orphanage. I think this is a great debut. I mean, it has hints of the Thin Lizzy that we would come to know and love, the more rock-oriented, hard rock-oriented Thin Lizzy. But this is a fantastic combination of Phil Lynott, the sensitive poet, and Phil, the kind of swaggering rock god. There are hints of that on here. It starts with Friendly Ranger at Clontarf Castle, which is almost spoken poetry set to tom rolls and shimmering guitar, and it's beautiful. As long as you're not expecting to hear thunder and lightning or the boys are back in town, you will find a lot to enjoy on this album, believe me. Honesty is No Excuse has Mellotron washes and Phil kind of channeling his inner Van Morrison. What else have we got? Track 4, Ray Gun. Superb song. There's a wah-wah intro. It's funky. And again, a bit like that track on Love's Out Here album. Just have to wonder if Lenny Kravitz was listening to it, because it is just so what Lenny Kravitz ended up doing. Really great track. Look What the Wind Blew In, which I love the title of that. I can imagine, Phil's mum saying that to him when he came in after a night out, or people saying it when the early Lizzy walked into a bar or something. That shows the first signs of the Phil Lynott we would come to know and love, that real swagger. The sensitive poet takes a back seat for this track, and it's a real hard rocker. So yeah, that one is hugely recommended. Side 2 starts with a track called Era Island, which is all echoey, fluid guitar lines, mellow tom rolls, and a beautiful vocal from Phil. The Clifton Grange Hotel is a story about the hotel that Phil's mother, Philomena, ran in Manchester, which tended to be a hangout for touring rock bands. So one thing I always loved about Thin Lizzy is the storytelling in the lyrics. And that from somebody who doesn't generally listen to lyrics much, but if they're good, if they are out of the ordinary, they just draw me in. And Phil Lynott was one of the best. It finishes with a track called Remembering, which is kind of a mixture of a gentle ballad and a hard rocker. Plenty of wah-wah on this one. And you can kind of see on this track, and particularly, and in fact the whole album, why Lizzy would ultimately settle on a 2-guitar lineup, because in every track pretty much Eric Bell is having to record 2 different guitar lines. You need twin lead guitars for Thin Lizzy, and even on this first album it's evidence that that was required. How they pulled it off live I don't know, because it seems like a fairly major part of the sound on this album. But Eric Bell's playing on this is absolutely fantastic. Really can't fault him. I don't know enough about the history of the band to know why he left, whether he was kind of shoehorned out or whether he chose to leave, but it certainly was nothing to do with playing, because he's amazing on this. So yeah, £15 for that. In fact, I paid a little bit less because I bundled it with a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, very happy to own that one. And then the final thing I'm going to show you isn't even vinyl, it's a CD, and it's by this band Under the Surface. And me and the wife went to see Lee Cunningham, who was formerly the singer and main songwriter in the band Person. She's always fantastic. I love her voice. She's a great guitar player. writes great songs which are kind of a mix of prog and psychedelia with a sort of Beatlesque vibe to some of it. And this band was supporting. And I should say, she was playing at Dingwalls in Camden Town, which is a venue I've been to a few times. Always enjoy it, but it's one of those places that tends to get lesser known bands. And Lee Cunningham's got a bit of a profile. I would have thought she'd be headlining bigger places. Not on complaining, because it's great to see someone like that close up. But there must have been 100, maybe 150 people in there at a push. And I'm just thinking, how come Taylor Swift is headlining, what was it, 7, 8, 9 nights at Wembley Stadium? One of the nights she was headlining Wembley Stadium was the night we saw Lee Cunningham. And to know that someone like that is headlining Wembley Stadium, Lee Cunningham's pulling in 100 punters in a Camden club, just seems wrong. But anyway, this was the support band. And when they first walked on stage and brought on a stand-up double bass and a lot of acoustic instruments, I thought, oh God, what's this going to be like? They were fantastic. They're a Dutch band. They are progressive folk, I suppose you'd call them. Their sound, I hear elements of the Cocteau Twins, of Alice Coltrane, Comus. They were just so good. The girl singer has the most almost bizarre but beautiful voice, really pure voice, but at times she's singing sounds rather than words. Some of the songs, and they're from Holland or from the Netherlands, but some of the songs they sing in Welsh, which just seems bizarre, but it works. And what a band. Absolutely loved them. You know, she was playing, I think it was kind of a hurdy-gurdy type of thing. The lead guitarist plays some beautiful hollow-bodied lead guitar. And thinking about the guitarist reminds me a bit of Jan Ackerman. So chuck that into the mix as well. Under the Surface. So that's it for now. I will show some more of my Vinted finds in another video, no doubt. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think of what I've shown. If you can fill out any background information that my video is lacking, that would also be good. And I'll see you soon. Bye for now.